Not a problem.
6 men from Birmingham have pleaded guilty to planning a terrorist attack on a march organised by the English Defence League in Dewsbury last.
There were last year clashes between the EDL and another group, Muslims Against Crusades, who set fire to poppies outside the Royal Albert.
To be back British, you've got international law and the Islamic infidel. They're trying to get their law over us.
They talk about the burqa. So you've got burqas just everywhere. Everywhere. They've got no place in modern society, burqas. The burqa's just a complete... That to integration, that to Britain.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. I'd like to thank you all first for coming to our program and attending our program tonight. For all of our guests who have taken the time out to be with us here, on your seats you would notice that you have some welcome packs which has a whole load of information. You've got question papers, and also there's evaluation forms, which I would really appreciate if you could fill that in before you leave tonight and leave it at the front registration desk as you leave. Also throughout the night we have members of the IDC team who are here on hand to support you throughout the evening. So if you have any questions, if you have anything that you need help or support on, please do feel free to contact any of them. Now, the purpose of tonight's program is really twofold. First of all, we as the Muslim community in the Northeast want to send out a strong message against all forms of extremism. This is why we, IDC Northeast, has organised this extremism event, or what is called the Face of Extremism, in order to send out that very strong message. Now, this is the second event of its sort. We did our first one in 2010, and this is the second one we're doing. And the second purpose, I suppose, of holding this open discussion, and I hope we do get some good discussion and questions being asked by the audience tonight to our panel, is to really have an open discussion on racism and anti-Muslim hatred in 21st century Britain. So they're the two reasons why we have organised this. Now, in light of recent events in Woolwich, it really has highlighted a serious concern in our communities and in our society as a whole. Some of the response and reactions that I personally have witnessed since the incident that took place in Woolwich, that very unfortunate incident I might add, has really, we've seen a readiness of many people, including the media, including the propaganda machine, so to speak, to blame a whole community and a whole religion on what the extreme minority do. And let's be quite frank about it, the Muslims, we are under the spotlight, and Islam is under the spotlight. And we're not the first community group who have been under this pressure, if you like, and we're probably not going to be the last community group. Because before us, we've seen, and even still today, the black community around Britain have been under extreme scrutiny, and also the Irish community and the Jewish community before that. So it's not something which is which is especially new just for Muslims. It has happened many a time for different community groups throughout the history of Britain in recent times. Now, when we see other community groups who also have extremists amongst them today, and violent members amongst them, whether it's based upon political and sometimes even religious motivations, they are seemingly less in the spotlight and are seldom called extremist or terrorist or whatever the terms, the labels that are being thrown about today when it comes to Muslims. And this is not to play down the severity of extremism and terrorism, but it's really just to highlight the point about the double standards that we see, and we don't see the same yardstick that is being shown when it comes to the Muslims who, or the minority of Muslims who do fall under this category of extremism and terrorism. And what are we really asking for as Muslims? Why have we organised this event? One of the things that we want to highlight is that we want to see a balanced approach, a just approach to any form of extremism. And I hope that tonight's programme will allow us to do that. Now, when something like this happens in Woolwich, the incident that took place in Woolwich, when something like this happens, really it puts our work as Muslims, the good work that Muslims do in our communities, in our society, it puts us back 10 years, if not more. It makes that rift, that gap, bigger between our communities. And incidents like this, and this is the truth, incidents like this affect the Muslims just as much as the non-Muslims who have been victim to this, if not more. How does it affect the Muslims? The reality is it harms everyone, not just non-Muslims, not just victims of extremism and terrorism. It harms everyone. This atmosphere of fear, this atmosphere of intimidation, it goes both ways. This idea of mistrust. Go back, 30, 40 years. Did we have such a thing of Muslim extremists? Was this term being thrown about? Forget 20, 30 years, let's talk 15 years ago, before September the 11th. Most people probably didn't even know what Islam was, let alone what is Islamic extremism, as some people like to refer it as. Now, how are Muslims affected by this? The reality is Muslims are a victim of terrorism and extremism also. The media backlash, the political backlash, the laws that are really quite specific, that can only really apply to the Muslim community, that are trying to be pushed through in Parliament. Who gets attacked after an incident like this happens? Muslim, usually women, are the ones who are most vulnerable to these attacks in public. So Muslims are just as much a victim of extremism as anybody else, is my point. So who benefits from these type of incidents? Who benefits from this type of actions? Certainly not the Muslims in this country, that's for sure. So where does it end? If we are, going to be true to ourselves, the propaganda machine that is being pushed out there, where does it end? We're seeing, Muslims being attacked from Islam, the whole religion of Islam being attacked from all angles, whether it's from the mainstream media, whether it's from politicians. We're hearing hate speech. We're seeing social media backlash. Statements like that we should just send them all home, get them all out of our country. Who is this all that they're talking about? Radical Muslims? Or every Muslim? Or every immigrant? Or every generation after those original immigrants that come over? Then what next? Then we're seeing threats. Then we're now seeing physical violence on the streets. Places of worship being attacked. Where does it stop? What's next? Nazi-style boot boys on the streets. What next? Genocide? Is that what's next? Where does it stop? This is the question. And really, from my point of view, it is time to stand up as a community to deal with these issues, to talk about them, to interact, to educate ourselves, to have those dialogues, to have those discussions. And this is why, you know, or this is what we're hoping to explore in tonight's program with our presentations, with our guest speakers tonight. We will be discussing a number of topics, a number of very important topics, the hot topics, if you like. Number one, Muslim extremism. What does it actually mean? What is it, and who are they? Number two, far-right extremism, and in particular far-right violent extremism. Hopefully we'll be touching upon some of those issues tonight. Racism and anti-Muslim hatred. And finally, the rise in Islamophobia. So I'm going to introduce our guest speakers now on that note when we're talking about solutions. I'm hoping that each guest speaker will have enough time to talk about their respective topics, and then once we've heard what they've had to say, we will open it up to a question-answer panel session where you, the audience, can interact with our guest speakers after hearing what they've said and ask your questions or make your comments about what you've heard tonight. Okay, so